Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. And if this is your first time tuning in to our podcast, we welcome you and I hope that today's episode is one that you will find enjoyable and will want you to come back for more. And if you're someone who is a returning listener or viewer of the podcast, as always, we thank you for your support. And we hope that this episode is one that you find informative, enlightening, and as always, insightful. So before we get into our main event, if you are on YouTube, please make sure you hit that red subscribe button so you can subscribe and check out new episodes of the podcast as well as notifications. And if you're listening from Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe there as well. We also accept any monetary donations for those who want to help us continue building this great platform and bringing on these phenomenal educators from across the globe. We accept donations through Cash App with the handle $IDTALK4ED or Venmo with our handle at Kwame SM. That's KWAMESM for those who are listening. And for those who like to catch up on past episodes of the podcast, of course, you can check us out on our YouTube channel, but you can also go to our main website at identitytalk4educators.com. As always, thank you all for the support. None of this is possible without you. All right, people. So this week, we have another phenomenal guest. Last week, we had our friend Rosa coming from New Zealand, and she was just talking about Pacific Islander culture, talking about her journey in Japan. Now we're going from one Kiwi to another Kiwi this week. So we got another educator also represented from New Zealand. She is somebody who has had a long, extensive career in international education, and I'm just excited to dig into her story. Had a chance to meet her at her school where the ALOC conference was located. So shout out to UNIS Hanoi in Vietnam. They were awesome hosts during our time there in January. And I've just been fortunate to have a few educators from that school come and share their story. And she's just another one from that school. So without further ado, let's bring on Adika Crémet to the podcast to share her story and what brought her into this great field that we love called education. So let's bring her on. Hello.
Hello.
How are we?
I'm good, and thank you for the lovely introduction.
Yes. So you represent for the Kiwis again this week, 2 weeks in a row.
Oh my gosh, it warms my heart when you mentioned that you interviewed Rosa. Oh gosh,
Yeah.
such a lovely sister to
Listen, I don't know. Maybe it's divine order that you all going back to back.
Oh, nah, it was amazing when you mentioned ALOC. Oh man, I felt like it was just yesterday meeting you and everyone, Kevin, Alec, Rama, I mean the whole gang. It really felt like home. So thanks ALOC and thanks Eunice Hanoi, my awesome workplace, for having it. It was just wonderful.
Yes. So yeah, let's get started. There's so much to touch on, so many questions that I have for you. But as always, we always want to start from the beginning. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, you grew up in New Zealand, but you've also spent time in a lot of other countries. So that will make you a tick, in other words, third culture kid growing up. So we'll have some time for you to delve into that journey. But just talk to us about that early upbringing. What was it like as far as growing up, family life, and all that good stuff?
Well, yeah, you kind of hit the nail on there. Um, well, yeah, I'm a third culture kid. As you can tell, I'm Eurasian, which many people do not really realize what that means. I'm part European, part Asian, mostly Asian, I guess. A bit hard to distinct. New Zealand is home because that's the longest time I've spent my life, and I really felt developed and shaped to be the human being I am today in New Zealand with all the cultures. I learned a lot from the indigenous people, the Maori people, and the culture when I was growing up and training to be a teacher there. As a child, it was a bit tricky. I was born in Singapore, and my heritage consists of Indonesian, Dutch, a bit of Japanese in me, and it has been quite a difficult journey in a way that I was not able to explain who I was growing up, like most kids who have similar backgrounds. But through those experiences, I guess, and moving and trying to figure out who I was or who I am. And it's still a lifelong learning process. I think for everyone, whoever you are, wherever you are, it's a never-ending journey to figure out who you are. It's not just about race or culture. It's also about who you are as a person, your strengths, your knowledge, your experiences, your skills, and everything is a developing. I call it a work in progress mode. There's no perfection. There's just progress. And I'm just very fortunate to have met many people that has inspired me. And why I wanted to be a teacher, there were many reasons to that. One was way before college, I was doing a few jobs here and there during the holidays. And one of my first jobs was actually working in a children's bookstore. And then I fell in love with children's literature. Like, I love reading them. And then I was reviewing them for the shop. And my boss at the time, Lynette, she's like, oh, maybe you should try storytelling. We have a storytelling session once a week for little kids and their families. So I'm like, oh, yeah, let me give that a try and see. And then through those interactions with kids and their moms and knowing more about, the child development and just watching those interactions just like drew me closer into, oh, maybe I wanted to be a teacher. But also I read a book. I don't know if you heard of the book Toto Chan. It's about a little girl that grew up in the World War II period and how she managed to be in this amazing school that was different, but what it promotes was love, freedom, and justice. And for me, I'm like, wow. I mean, I can't go back and change my childhood or my schooling, but what if I become an educator and maybe I have a chance to learn to become a good educator and maybe be part of that great school? So that was kind of a dream. And then now, yeah, 18 years later, I'm an educator and I'm still loving it. So yeah, that's the long story short, I guess.
All right, cool. So let's talk about your schooling. So, other than New Zealand, where are some other countries where you grew up?
Oh gosh. Well, Singapore was one of them. I didn't really enjoy the schooling system there. It was pretty hard. It was rough, but that makes me a good mathematician, I guess. The math curriculum was pretty good there. Yeah, in Germany and Stuttgart and Hamburg, and Geneva, New Zealand, of course, in Brazil. Yeah, that's to name a few. And
All
very
right.
diverse, very different. Some are IB, some are private, some are local curriculum. And yeah, it really gives you a perspective now as a teacher that, oh yeah, education can exist in different forms. So yeah, I'm still okay. I'm still doing great. And yeah, education can be very fluid and flexible. So I like that about education in schools.
All right, awesome. So, thinking about all the different countries you've lived in during your childhood, I'm wondering what your schooling was like. Were there times where you experienced struggles or hardships adjusting to your new surroundings, but also trying to embrace your identity and who you were? Because you mentioned earlier that you were still grappling with that part. And as far as trying to make sense of who you are and who you were at that time. So I'd love for you to just share, if any, struggles that you might have had in navigating that.
Yeah, this is a question that really, I guess, still have people wondering or questioning a lot about who they are. I'm always that elephant sitting on the fence, depending on where I am. In Western parts of the world, I guess I'm always seen as some kind of Asian. And then when I'm in an Asian part of the world, I could be known as a different kind of Asian or not really Asian. Or if I'm with people that might have the same experiences or background as me, I'm still considered different in many ways. So growing up, I find it difficult to fit into a group automatically. It was something that I needed to suss out for a while. I needed to really observe, listen, and think, oh, are these people speaking my lingo, my language? And when I was really young, I remember as young as I was 5, I was already being bullied, um, or picked out from the crowd pretty quickly, because I find it very hard to settle going to school, new friends, being a new person. And I see it today when I see new kids transitioning, coming to school. I'm like, oh yeah, those were the days. Big shoes to fill. And I guess I also feel like because of that, believe it or not, when I was a kid, I was very quiet because I couldn't express myself. And at one point, I remember at school, at primary school, one of my teachers told my parents that perhaps I'm a bit delayed in my speech, but it's because I don't even know how to express who I was, or in
Wow.
which language I wanted to express myself in, or whether or not I'm actually part of this culture. It was really hard. But I knew I grew up with, surrounded by many languages or diverse people in my family, because I'm from a multicultural background, right? And even then, that was hard for me to understand why are my family looking so different? It's not very clear cut. But what I've learned to navigate through those years is just, it took years for people to know how to pronounce my name. It took years for people to actually realize, oh, I'm not just one race or one culture. And sometimes I remember one time I was so tired of explaining who I was or where I'm from that I just said, oh yeah, I'm a human being. I'm just a TCK. And that's like the lazy way of just, or the easy way out, right? Just to avoid those big questions or further investigations, I call it, or interrogation. I'm like, I don't have time for this. But definitely after I turned, I guess, 11 years old, I had some good friends who were like me. They were Eurasians. One of my best friend, Nadia, she was half German, half Chinese. And we clicked, and we were in a Mandarin class, and we were both the worst students ever, and we always get picked by the teacher for not being able to pass spelling. The spelling is horrendous. Mandarin is hard. And we became best friends for that few years,
Wow.
and we just connected, and both of us learned
Wow.
to speak up. And every time people were trying to say, oh, you're a monkey, oh, you're a mango, oh, you're banana, like, we're just like, meh, we're not gonna worry about that. We know who we are. And yeah, that was the first time I felt like I was really growing up and having more maturity at that point. But I had an ally. I felt like I had a friend. I had a real friend. And I think that's really important for all kids, to have a real friend at school, and be able to have that support, social emotional well-being. Yeah, because it can be isolating when you don't know who you are, or you can't express yourself. It can be daunting, especially if you're in a big school, a big international school, or even a big local school. Any school, it's scary. Yeah, those were kind of some of my struggles growing up. But definitely once I went to college, I'm fine. I found more people like me, and I felt, yeah, this is normal. This is not as weird as it was growing up. It became more natural to me.
All right. So you were sharing about your schooling and how you were being bullied, but I'm pretty sure along the way there were some things you were able to do to create a sense of belonging in the different places you were in. So you mentioned that you found some Eurasian friends who you could relate to, and that allowed you to build a mini community in those spaces. But were there some other things that you were doing at that time that allow you to exist and to navigate these different places you lived in?
Yeah, for sure. I think I draw very closely to people who were from a Japanese descent or Dutch descent very quickly. I picked it up really quickly. I scout for them. In Brasilia, yeah, definitely. With the Japanese Brazilian kids, we just click. And even till today, I'm really more easily drawn to my Japanese students because we make connections to food, for example, or cartoons growing up, comics, like Doraemon and onigiri and sushi. And that reminds me fondly of my late granddad, who was a big source of inspiration for me. Yeah, and Dutch, yeah, it reminds me a lot of my dad too. an Indonesian in some form. Like, for example, now I'm working with Putri, who's my colleague, and she'll remind me of all those childhood snacks that I used to have when I visited any aunties or uncles, in Indonesia. And like, yeah, I love kerupuk. Yeah, we talk about that. And we like, yeah, that kueh, yeah, it's delicious. It's so sweet and sticky. Those
Yeah.
memories just brings you together to kind of your people, right? And I could be with different people. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Enjoy meeting people that way through cultures. And I guess then I become very fluid. Like, I'm happy to be with any Asian or anybody that I know I make connections with. And also in New Zealand, a lot of my good friends are from South Africa. So, a lot of South Africans became my good friends. My neighbor Rochelle, she was from South Africa. She was really friendly and always warm. And then I played netball. So a lot of my friends were from South Africa, from Durban. And yeah, those connections just quickly, catch up and grew and grew. And by the next minute, you just feel, I'm friends with everybody. Everyone's just normal to me. Like, I didn't even look beyond the passport or the cultures or whatever. Like, they just became your friends and you learn so much from them, right? And food is always the best part. Like, hey, come, let's have a party. And then, oh, I'm gonna try this food and play games or music. I love music. I just appreciate African music as well. My kids love it in the classroom, and it gives that sense of earthiness, groundedness. Yeah, music and food and games and languages. I love languages, so just listening to other people speak languages, it just makes me feel like, yeah, I'm a TCK, and I'm feeling proud of it. Like, we're all one people, one planet. Like, yeah, it makes me feel happy. Yeah, and that's how I survive, I guess, growing up, just finding those pockets of people in different groups and finding those small connections really bring me along. Really help me to sail.
Right.
Yeah.
So I actually have another question, but before I get to that real question, I gotta do a quick sidebar.
Hmm.
So you mentioned netball.
Yeah.
So excuse my ignorance because I'm not quite sure how netball's played. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing how
Ah.
that's played, what it is for our listeners who may be curious about what netball is, although you could always YouTube it and find out. But since you're here,
Hmm. Oh, my sister Rosa would have been happy to explain that too. So, netball is big in New Zealand and Australia and all the Commonwealth countries, actually. And how it's played, so you have two teams, and you have a goal shoot, a goal attack, wing defense, a center. And you have to get the ball from the center court all the way to the hoop, the net. It's similar to basketball, but you don't dribble, you just pass, and you can't step after you run and make your step and pass. So it's like, if not, you'd be called for stepping. And the hoop, the net doesn't have a board like basketball, it's just a hoop. So it can be quite challenging. But the court looks very similar to a basketball court, and it's very popular amongst women. But men also love playing it, so it's a growing sport for men. It's big in Australia and New Zealand. It's just like cricket, big deal. So netball is bigger than basketball down in the southern hemisphere. And growing up, if you grew up in a New Zealand school, most of the time, every Saturday, your kids are either playing netball, rugby, or soccer. So
mm,
these are the three main sports. And yeah, and in New Zealand, even South Africa, yes, definitely. England, Jamaica, West Indies, like all the Commonwealth countries play netball, just like cricket.
all right, cool. All right.
I
Well,
hope,
appreciate the explanation.
I hope
Now
it's
I'm
clear.
gonna go ahead and YouTube it, see if I can catch some games.
Yes, and see beautiful women. Not that you need it, but yes, tall women. I used to be skinny, but not anymore. But that game was really good. It was a good game to play.
All right, awesome. Appreciate that. So, get into the actual question I wanted to ask you. You are a mother, correct?
No, I'm not a mom.
Not yet?
Not
Okay.
yet.
So, let's do hypotheticals here.
Mhm.
Let's assume that you are a parent
Mhm.
and you're bringing your child into this beautifully complicated world. that you were in, being a third culture kid and now you're an adult. How would you go about helping your child navigate this environment? How would you help them make sense of what's going on around them? Because it's complicated, as you already know.
Whew, that's a loaded question, Kwame.
It's what I do.
Jeepers creepers. I'm sorry. I need some mojo here. No, I'm kidding. Well, if I were a mom and I have a child in this complicated world today, I think the first thing I would do in this chaotic world of mess, but yet beauty, I'll call it, is definitely to instill a lot of affirmations and definitely shape my child according to who he or she is, rather than letting the world shape my child. Because I think that was how I felt growing up. There was a lot of pressure, and I feel it's similar to many children today or many people, even as adults. We are always pulled in many directions, right? Depending on what pressure you're in. Is it
Yeah.
social pressure, peer pressure, consumerism pressure, economic pressure? There's just so many pressures in the world right now. And I think I would teach my child to first be assured of who he or she is, really valuing him or herself and knowing who he or she can become, the potential of it, really positive self-talk, because what's happening today is scary. And even in the world of AI, I feel being able to have the agency and being able to have that sense of responsibility and accountability to know when to stop and have that boundary. As you know, like the social media world or AI games and all that. I mean, it's so violent compared to where we were 10 years ago or 20
Very
years.
true.
I mean, the cartoons these days are scary or violent or just really crazy. I mean, like, wow, what happened to My Little Pony and Mr. Potato Head? Like, it's like so different. It's a whole new world. I'm like, whoa, so sophisticated now. And honestly, I feel worried if I were to have a child, because for me, violence is something I really don't like. I'm afraid to teach in certain parts of the world because I'm afraid to be shot one day as a teacher going to school, or to be, harassed with racial abuse, or if I have those fear, definitely for my child, that will be the same fear or even double or triple because they're unable to defend themselves or advocate for themselves, right? And so I think as an adult, as a parent, or even as an educator, as anyone who is serving families and advocating for children, I mean, you really have to put the child at the center of everything and figure out the layers that surrounds that child and how that impacts that child and even the people around that child. It's really like, the saying, it takes a village to raise a child, and it's true. You have to connect yourself to a safe place, to a community you can trust, to a community that you can grow and thrive and learn from, and be able to figure out who you are and who you can become. And it takes time, and it takes trust, respect, and that, that also that vulnerability,
Mhm.
because I think a lot of people are living with a facade, or with a mask just to survive the toughness of life. Life is tough. I mean, and always tell this to the kids. I don't hide it. And I say, kids, life is tough. You have to solve your own problems sometimes, as young as 5 years old, because no one's going to do it for you later on. You have to learn it in small doses rather than, oh no, I'm faced with this issue now. What do I do? And it's crippling our society, our younger generation, because we are not preparing them to face a lot of difficulties later in life. A lot of them are very privileged or taken care of, overprotected, overcared for. And I think when you are a teacher, you're not just teaching, you're also educating. I like this word because I work with young children.
Mhm.
And so caring is a huge aspect of educating, because you want them to be holistically developed, not just educationally developed, if you get what I mean. As that's very
Yes.
short-sighted, right? And they have an impact because they go home and their learning impact their family's learning. So we are connected. It's not just a silo thing. Like, you are working together. So we have to form those good partnerships so that you can build those bridges and help one another. I think that's what I like to see my role as an educator, or even a member of my community, like as a neighbor, as a friend, as a colleague. Like, what is my role? Like, it's not just that one role, because your role either exemplifies or interconnect or how to say merges. I don't know. That it's very fluid. Like, I like the word fluidity, because we are like water. We go in different places like molds. Like, you take the shape of where you go, right? And I think that's what TCKs helped me grow into. Like, I need to go with the flow. I can't just be this person for the rest of my life, or be this type of person, or have this type of attitude, or this type of thinking. You have to go with the flow.
Wow. And this was not a question that I gave you, but look at how you body that question. You came prepared. That's what I'm talking about. See, I knew I could.
I go make coffee, and I hope I'm not mumbling. It's 8:30. This is
No,
like my
you are good. You are good. So
cheers.
listen, you said some interesting points, which I agree with. I think for one, given your third culture background and growing up Eurasian, you're always prone to being otherized wherever you go. And I can relate to that, being a Black expat, having parents that grew up in Ghana, and then I grew up in the States. And then, you go to Ghana, people look at you more as an American than they do a Ghanaian, and then you go to the States, it's vice versa. But then I also think about international education. And what's fascinating is you would think that third culture, people with third culture backgrounds would be the perfect international educators because they're so worldly and they've been exposed to so many different languages, so many different backgrounds, but yet they're the same ones that get otherized. They get otherized in recruitment, they get otherized in curriculum, they get otherized in so many different ways, which I see that as a misalignment, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. So thinking about all this that I mentioned, what caused you to want to leave New Zealand, where you'd spent so much time professionally and personally, to want to now pursue a career in international education?
Yeah, that's a good question. I loved being New Zealand. That's why I started my teaching career, and how I became a teacher. But I guess meeting so many people from other parts of the world, and being curious about what international education might look like, really put me on a whirlwind. Like, I think I want to try this, and I want to give it a shot. So I signed up to a teaching agency at the time, and not long after that, I got a couple of interviews offered. And yeah, and one of my first international job was actually in Denmark. I don't know if you know Timothy Veal. He is now the director of Copenhagen International School. But at the time, he was the head of school in a place called Esbjerg, which is in the South Jutland area of Denmark. So I got a couple of job interviews online through the teaching agency, and then I got a job offer from school in Esbjerg, which is in South Jutland of Denmark, where Timothy Veal, or I should say Dr. Timothy Veal, as of today, who is now the director of Copenhagen International School, he hired me. And I was like, okay, here we go. I think I'm going, I can't pick a close enough country that I go all the way from New Zealand to Denmark, which is on the other side of the globe. Packed my one suitcase, and went all the way to Billund Airport, which is on the other side of the world. And lo and behold, I arrived and it was cold. And this guy, Lenny, I still remember Lenny, with a card with my name on it, was standing at the arrival gate welcoming me. And what really blew my mind, was that I still couldn't believe till I got to Denmark, to Billund Airport, and in that car on my way, driving to Esbjerg, that I was there. Like, I'm like, wow, I really left New Zealand. I'm like, wow, I did it. And what really shocked me more, in a good way, was that when I arrived there, I was one of the very few colored and female teachers there. I mean, Denmark is a very Caucasian, European, Scandinavian heavy populated place, right? And all my kids, almost all my kids, my students were white, blue-eyed, blonde, and spoke Danish or Swedish or Finnish, you name it. And so I felt a little bit intimidated at first or unsure at first, but when I got there, everybody greeted me very, very warmly. Tim is from Canada, and then Linda, the vice principal, she's Dane. And then James, at the time, he was I think he was the principal in the secondary school. He's British. And then Claire, the HR person, she was British. And then there was one Asian guy, Mr. Han. He works at the front office. He's from China. So I kind of like connected with him a little bit because I'm like, oh, someone different, someone like me. So I got a bit happy. And then I met Mr. Noko, Mr. Eric Noko. He was from Cameroon. So he quickly became a good friend of mine, like a brother. Like, I remember him. He was a good sort. He was a science teacher in high school, and him and his wife and 2 kids really, really were warm and welcoming. And he was a wise man. I liked him. He always gave me good tips on how to survive Danish culture. he was one of those people. And then and most of my colleagues were Germans, Danes, English. There was a couple of Americans, Canadians, and then some of them from Hungary. And what was really odd was I was the teacher, the homeroom teacher, and then the head teacher, right? But my assistants were all Danes, Hungarian, American, like they were Caucasian. And I'm the Asian looking sort of person. And I was worried because I'm like, oh, wow, will the families accept that, hey, I'm a colored person and I'm not Caucasian? But no, the families were just so warm and welcoming and open. And I love my time there. I stayed there for nearly 5 years. But then I had to leave because I met my French husband and we were getting married. And then an opportunity came in China. And also I couldn't save because the taxes were so high. So I'm like, I love that. But the taxes were sky high and savings was not really feasible or achievable. But I had a good life. I met some amazing people there. And so it brought me to Shanghai. And that was a different story because when I came to China, I was hired by, I worked in a couple of schools, but my first school, the one that brought me over, that threw me off the bus because when I arrived, the first thing I was invited to the principal's office. And she said, you're brilliant. We love you. We hired you. But because you look Asian, we will have to hire a Caucasian TA for you so that we will appease the parents because it's a kind of a bilingual international school. And to my shock, horror, I'm like, am I being discriminated for looking like them? Or, it was a shock. I told this to my newly-wed husband and he was like, what? What? Like it was shock horror. And so, my TA at the time was an Irish girl that they found. And I was totally in shock for like the first 6 months. But quickly, after 6 months, the parents, the grandparents just saw me as a teacher, as an educator, and they started to trust me. They were warm towards me, and those issues or those fear of me not being good enough because of my looks or maybe the way I speak or the way I look or whatever, totally went away. And then that TA went away, and I got local TAs then, and then but anyway, the whole administration changed anyway after that because it was just bogus, what's going on. But that gave me a huge learning insight and just made me realize, no matter how educated you are or who you are, people will still judge you for how you look like or how you speak or how you dress or where you came from without wanting to know your story. And that's hard because that's not fair. That's really injustice that, but that's life. And it's happening every day, everywhere, to everyone in some way or another, right? But that made me stronger. That made me braver. And I told myself, I'm going to fight these people. Now I'm going to start having a voice. And in one way now is after discovering ALOC and working in other international schools and meeting more like people like myself, I think it's important to just speak up and just stand your truth and work for worth people, for worth causes, with good schools, not just because the school is a good school because of its name or because rich people go there or because it has a certain standard. Nah, you wanna be able to do good.
Right.
Yeah. So
Wow.
that's what I've learned, Kwame.
So this season, Identity Talk for Educators Live will be including ad spots for businesses, products, and events that are adding significant value to their communities. And here's the catch. You don't have to be an educator or an education-based business to be a part of this. We're looking for people who are just doing great work in the community, and we want to use our platform as a way to amplify their work. So if you are an entrepreneur or you know of an entrepreneur who is doing just that, bring them in our direction. Have them reach out to us. If they want to learn more about their ad spots and how they can get themselves promoted on this platform, they can contact myself, Kwame at identitytalkforeducators.com. I'll say it one more time. It is Kwame at identitytalkforeducators.com. Hope to hear from you, and let's keep on amplifying our work and building each other up. Hold up. They hired a white Irish person to be your TA
Mm-hmm.
because of how you looked phenotypically.
Yeah. I might look a little bit too Chinese or too Asian to be a homeroom teacher.
Wow.
Yeah. It baffles me too at the time. And then I just came from Denmark, which I was totally a complete opposite of what it was. I was the most colored person in that room, but I was loved and cherished, and I had a good time. I was, yeah, it was a total wow moment for me, but
See,
I will never forget it.
yeah, I would think that the experiences would have been flipped.
No, it was the other way around.
Mm. So, saying all this, we know that you are an advocate when it comes to children's rights. You're very passionate about that. You've talked about your own experience being a third culture kid. So, I'd love to hear from you. How has going through this process of unpacking your own identity allow you to be more aware and conscious of the intersections of some of your students' identities coming in? And we don't have to limit it to just your third culture kids, but just all students in general.
Now, this is a good question. I think the first thing I always observe and I'm very aware or make sure I put a lot of attention to is when my Western colleagues or native speakers always think that, oh, a colored child straight away is a non-native English speaker, or the English could be in a very low level. Because that's not true. Because if that child is a third culture kid, and if that child has grown up all their life, or all his or her life in America or England, English is their first language. So by
Mhm.
doing that, by putting them in a basket, you're already discriminating them, and that's injustice. So I like to ask questions. I like to ask clarifying questions. I like to paraphrase when I find it is something that might be untrue or something that might not be accurate. I would say let's check. Let's do some research. Let's check in with the family, or let's ask the child. Let's communicate with the child. The child has agency. The child can speak for themselves. As young as 3 years old, a child knows what they want, what he or she wants. If you give them the opportunity to make a choice, or even think about, or even have the respectful, interaction, and give that child that opportunity to be him or herself. So I believe I'm proud of my team, who's really passionate about ABA work, which is anti-racist, anti-bias work. And we always make sure that we put the child's voice first, that child as who he or she is, rather than us always speaking for that child. And even to parents, we try very our very best to advocate for them. For example, this may sound lame, but often children come to school sick because
Yeah.
they don't have any say. And for me as a teacher, it's my job to advocate for that child, to tell parents, hey, we notice your son is not feeling well. He tripped a few times today. He bumped himself. He just saying, I'm tired. And then true enough, we took him to the nurse and he's got a low temperature. It pays to let him rest a day at home. Because if we are sick, we would take a day off and we would rest at home. But I felt it's injustice to give your child medicine and force the child to go to school and just feel awful. It's horrible to be at school sick, and to me that's injustice. So that's one way I could advocate for a child. It's like give them a voice and give them that sense of right. And it's in different ways, even food. Like for example, um, I always make myself known in the school. I don't just teach in this grade level or in this classroom. I feel like I'm a teacher for all kids. So I would play with everyone. If I'm on duty, I'll speak to everyone. And I got to know a few kids in middle and high school. And the other day, I happened to be at the cafeteria, and one of the students who I know is from this BIPOC group, he came to me and said, hi. And I said, hi, how are you doing? And I said, oh. And he said, I'm good. I'm just getting lunch. And I said, great. And then I saw him walking back and forth, looking a little bit down. And I said, hey, is everything okay? He's like, I don't know. I think my cat has no money. I don't think I can have lunch. And I said, look, try again. If it doesn't work, don't hesitate to come to me. I'll pay for your lunch. It's okay. And I'm glad, because a few minutes later, he did come back and he did say, oh, Miss Adika, my card didn't work. Is it okay if you buy me lunch? I said, sure. I'm glad you asked. You need to eat. So those are small ways as an educator that you can help or advocate for children. Like we should never, ever not help anyone. I think regardless, if you're an educator, your goal, your true calling is to stand up for any child's rights in different forms and ways.
Yes.
And especially to bring that understanding with parents that, hey, this is what they need. How can we help you? How can we support you? And every child has their own needs at every age level. So yeah, for me that's really important, just advocating for them in different ways and just being available and giving them that courage, that opportunity to speak up or to make choices. I think that's really important. Small choices can lead to big impact. So yeah, that's my firm belief. And of course you need the support of your team. And yeah, I'm just so happy that I can go to a workplace where my team believes in the same goal, to put children at the center, giving them that opportunity to be who they are, and for us to support them. And we're still learning too. We're on a learning journey, and we are together continuously learning and wanting to learn from other people, learning from our community, learning from each other, because we're all so special and unique. And it just makes it amazing to go to work every day. I mean, yeah, I can't wait to go to work every day. It's just fantastic. Yeah.
Yes. And we are all lifelong learners. And clearly you're somebody who embodies that. And I know you just mentioned that small choices lead to big impact. Well, you know what? Sometimes big choices lead to big impact. And you recently made a major decision in enrolling in this program through Harvard University. So, first off, congratulations on getting into the Certificate in School Management and Leadership program. It is a phenomenal program, I've heard. I know a lot of international educators have gone through this program and have said wonderful things about it. So, first off, just talk to me about what the program is, just a brief overview, and why did you ultimately decide this is what I need in order to elevate my teaching practice?
Oh, thank you, Kwame. Yeah, in this belief that, yeah, I got accepted,
Why
and
you
yeah,
disbelieve?
because I was like, okay, I'm just gonna apply and see what happens. And yeah, got accepted. The official letter or email came in. I'm like, oh yeah, it's really happening. Great. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to start that program in October. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people doing it, and I'm starting to think far. I'm starting to think about the future, and what other ways can I serve the in the world and community of education. So leadership is one way. And what really attracts me to this program are the modules. They have 4 modules, and it's all about leading people, leading change, leading innovation and strategy, um, and for me, and leading culture. And for me, this module speaks to me because, as a huge advocate for DIJB and being the person myself, I think, I hope that the knowledge and the experience that I'll gain from this program will help me promote more of that DIJB voice, but also, also rights for children and for educators. Like, how can we be the best version of ourselves through understanding how do we lead people and lead. To me, the word lead or being a leader is not about just making sure that everybody does the job, or having things done in a certain way, because people are complex, the world is complex. And I've been in both situations, and I'm still, a leader, but I'm also a participant, a member. And I think it takes everyone to go in the same direction. And it's about having a shared goal, a shared vision, and distributing that work, because many hands make work lighter. And I say this every day to my kids in my class. Like, if everybody helps, then we have less work to do. But it also takes everyone to make that change, that positive change. And I know education is one way, so I want to educate myself further. I want to really find out what's really happening now. What are the best, not best, but what are the current trends and strategies and, situation in the world of education, but also in the world of leadership. What excites me is that a lot of people that take this program or this certificate course said that it helped them to think outside of the box. And it nudges them to take more risks and be more courageous. And that's what I aspire to be. I want to become more courageous. Because sometimes I'm afraid to share my thoughts or my thinking, because I think sometimes I'm a bit radical because I think differently. And I think that's hard. But then since I came to UNIS, Hanoi, I feel more and more like I fit the right pair of shoes, because I could become more and more of myself and share my radical ideas without being judged or being questioned or being looked at weirdly, or with the side eyes, like, what is she talking about? I don't understand. Like, because the people who actually think and speak like me, or yeah, I get what you're saying. And I felt, wow, I'm home. I'm like, an ALOC conference was just that. I'm like, I'm with my people. I feel like we're in a different planet, like the Jetsons, like we're totally in a different world, and we're all living our lives. We're having fun, just being ourselves. I'm like, I want the world to be like this, but this is a small atom. I feel like we're just a small atom of fun, colorful fun, truth, life, I think that's what the whole world is missing out when it comes to the structured, rigid systems that we are succumbed to, or we are told to be part of, be it work, be it education, be it whatever. We all have different expectations, right, set upon us. So yeah, I hope this program will just build up my courage and give me the right tools and the right, I guess, thinking and ways to be that courageous leader or that courageous educator, and add more value to my community, to the people I work with. That's my hope.
You know what? And that's a hope that we all have in this work. But I want to address this word radical because, recently radical has just been this word that's had this negative connotation attached to it. Like, if you're considered a radical person, that makes you somebody that's a rebel, somebody that's defiant or a criminal. And it's like, no. We talk so often about 21st century skills that our children should have in this day and age. We talk about innovation. We talk about creativity. I look at those things as radical because it goes outside of the traditional norm that we're so used to when we think about schools. That's radical. So if you're an educator that's looking for students to acquire these 21st century skills, I would consider you to be radical. So yeah, I want to be a radical person. I believe that every person should strive to be radical.
Yeah. thanks. That's good. We should amplify this. Like A-Log's radical dream. We have to be radical.
Exactly. So it's not just limited to DIJ. That's just a part of it. It's
Mhm,
about how we restructure and reimagine and redefine the way that we just do education as a whole.
mhm.
That's what encompasses radicalism, right? But
Yeah.
we could spend a whole nother episode talking about that. It's not gonna happen today because I'm about to wrap this thing up with this question.
Well, read Toto Chan. I've got the book here. This radically changed my life.
Ooh,
You have to read it. I mean, come on.
there we go. Let's hold that up. Toto
Toto
Chan.
Chan.
Okay. The
Yeah.
little girl at the window.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. All
Yeah.
right, y'all. Make sure y'all get that book, Toto Chan. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I might even put it in the episode notes for
Mm-hmm.
folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. I mean, the synopsis, I can read it to you. This engaging series of childhood recollections tells about an ideal school in Tokyo during World War II that combined learning with fun, freedom, and love. This unusual school had old railroad cars for classrooms, and it was run by an extraordinary man, its founder and headmaster Sosaku Kobayashi, who was a firm believer in freedom of expression and activity. Yeah, in real life, it's based on real life story. So in real life, the Toto-chan of the book has become one of Japan's most popular television personalities, Tetsuko Kuroyanagi. She attributes her success in life to this wonderful school and its headmaster. And the charm of this account has won the hearts of millions of people of all ages and made this book a runaway bestseller in Japan, with sales hitting the 4.5 million mark in the first year.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yep, and it is, and I think it's been endorsed by, yeah, and Kuroyanagi is Asia's first UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador and serves on the board of the Worldwide Fund for Nature. Yeah,
All right.
it changed my life. It will change yours if you really don't know you really changed.
You know what? I might have to get the ebook version if that exists.
I'm sure it does. It better be.
Okay. Only
Yeah.
because here in my house we're in the process of decluttering and trying to get
Mm,
rid of things so we can't acquire any more weight. I mean, anybody who works in foreign service, anybody who works in international education, you
mhm.
understand how crucial it is to keep that weight down as far as the stuff that you bring. Because when you're shipping it to that next post, it goes against you financially now.
Mhm.
The more
I
you acquire in these different spaces, the more you begin to hoard all these different things.
I know.
So,
That's our downfall. I have more books than clothes or shoes. It's a shame.
uh, yes, and books
But
carry so much more weight than clothes.
I
What?
know. I
Uh,
know. But that's
but
that's that's life. I mean,
it is.
it shows we love reading, and yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm decluttering. I've gotten rid of, I think, 10 bags, 10 IKEA bags full of stuff. Like,
Good for
how did we
you.
put all this
Good for
in?
you.
No, it's a tough process.
It is because there's an emotional attachment to some of the things that you're trying to get rid of. But that's what causes the hoarding to take place because you believe there's some significant value to this. Or it
Yeah.
might be a case of, I'm going to use this one day. You all watch. It might not be tomorrow. It might not even be next week. It may not even be next month. But I know that at some point in the future, I'm going to end up using this thing. I just don't
Yeah.
know when.
And then you end up with 5 potato peelers. After 5 years. This is the truth. Oh
Yeah,
my.
no, that's real. That's real. All right. So we're gonna wrap it up with this last question.
Hmm.
So, how do you stay true to the teacher in you?
This is a good question. I think what keeps me going every day is knowing that I wake up and when I go to work or to school, I'm responsible for every single life of those kids. I'm serving families and their kids who trust me, who allows me to be with their children for a whole day or part or half the day, which is a big part of their lives. And for me, that's a huge responsibility, and you have to be accountable for it. And I take it seriously. I take my role as an educator seriously. As I say, I'm EduCaring. You're not working with products. You're working with human beings. and the
right.
future of, I know, the future generation of the world, um, especially in this time and this kind of world we're living in. I feel like the responsibility has doubled or gone bigger, because there's also moral education and values and, other things that you have to instill in the children, right? It's not just reading and writing and math. No, it's not just that. It's a lot of things. And for me, the joy of just watching a child learn how to write, how to read, how to tie their shoelaces, those kind of amazing skills and discoveries just keep me going. It just ground me and think that I am nurturing a child, a person, a human being. And it's not something that you can just click a button. It's not something that you can just like, I can pause it there like a remote control and or fast forward. No, you have to be in the present. You have to be in the past, because you have to plan and you have to work and you have to really think about it. You got to be in the present. You got to really be in action, be engaged, be involved. And you got to be in the future, because you have to reflect and have a lot of conversations with different people just for the future of that child or those children. So like, it's a full circle. And for me, that's fulfilling as a teacher, as an educator. So if anyone is just wondering, why should I be an educator? Well, you really change lives, not just the child's lives, but also the family's lives. Because like Mandela say, right? Education is the most powerful weapon in the world, and we have to give that to our children. And for me to be able to teach something, even something, I think I'm doing something good. I think that's good enough, in this
Yeah.
world. Like, just to do that small thing. It doesn't have to be big, but you just have to do it with a good heart, and with a lot of positivity, positive intention. Just like the norms, like be a good listener. Really, 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 really have a heart. You need to have a heart. It's sad that sometimes I work with teachers that are just either focused on the benefits or focus on their own accolades, but not really fully involved in the real nitty gritty of it, which is working with the children, like being part of the children's life. And sometimes we forget that we are actually filling in the shoes of their busy parents, and we are role models.
Hmm.
And this is something you can't discount at any time. Even if you're tired, you have to be present. And the kids appreciate that. They will show you back how, I mean, they are like, we're like mirrors, what we show, what we reflect will be shown back to us. So this is something I'm learning. So definitely you have to instill everything with a heart. Yep, that keeps me going until my body says, okay, DK, you're too old to do this now. You have to do something else. You're broken. You can't go down on the floor anymore. You
There
can't
you
do all
go.
those things anymore. The body would tell me when it's time for me
Oh,
to retire.
it definitely will. It tells me every time I wake up. Trust me. All right. Well, on that note, Adika, thank you. Thank you so much for taking time to share your story. I know it's around bedtime where you are, so extra thanks to you for sacrificing some of that beauty sleep. For those who want to continue to connect with you and learn more about what you're doing, can they do that on social media?
Well, on Twitter, you can follow me at Crémet Adika. That's my last name and my first name together. And then on LinkedIn, Adika Crémet, you can follow me on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, those are the two ways you can follow me or get connected with me. I would love to learn and share with as many educators out there and make those connections grow.
All right, y'all heard it here. So, my friend, we're gonna have to find some time to do a part two. There's so many things that we didn't get to, and that's totally fine. We're gonna reserve it for another time.
Oh gosh. I hope it's okay. If it's really bad, you can scrape it. It's okay.
Oh no, we're not scraping this. No, this is a good one. This
Oh
was
my.
a good one. I enjoyed myself. Did you?
Yes, I did. But I'm like,
All
am
right.
I waffling at any point? It's past my bedtime. Am I waffling? Like this was going in my
Nah,
head.
you're okay. You're okay. All
Oh,
right.
good.
Well, let me let you get some rest, Adika. We'll talk soon.
No problem. Thank you. I hope
All
someone will
right.
interview you too one day.
Oh, hey, listen, and I'll be ready for it. All right. Take
Alrighty.
care.
Thanks
All
again.
right.
Take
Au
care.
revoir.
Au revoir.
All right, y'all. So we're gonna end another episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live. And as always, I wish you all good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. And we are gonna do this again another time. Peace out, everybody.